My name is Mary Beth George, and I'm a certified Gottman Method couples therapist, and I'm also a master trainer for the Gottman Institute. I have a practice called Couples Counseling and Professional Training Associates in Houston, Texas. So let me break down what those four horsemen of the apocalypse are that Gottman refers to. They are criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. So I'm going to start with stonewalling. Stonewalling means that when a discussion needs to happen between two people, that one person may bring up the issue and then the other person stonewalls. So that feels like we're hitting a brick wall, right, with stonewalling. And what that means is this person who is stonewalling is actually turning away, sometimes physically turning away or shutting down from their partner. This conversation is getting shut down in some way. And what Gottman found is that people do this stonewalling because they get very overwhelmed. There's physiological overwhelm that occurs. And it very much looks like a fight or flight. And many of us, you, me, have experienced fight or flight situations. Let me give you an example of that to kind of explain what couples go through, what they experience when this happens. So, this incident occurred for me and my husband a few years ago, actually more than a few, probably about 10 years ago. We were driving to New Mexico with our then 9-year-old son. And so we were driving along the highway, and I knew that my husband wasn't feeling well. But he likes to drive. So I was just kind of, looking out the window, and he's driving. And all of a sudden, I become aware that our truck is kind of veering off the road, like we're drifting. And I look over at him, and he falls over flat on top of me. He fainted. I didn't know what happened. I was scared, right? But the only thing I can think of was I have to get to safety. It was like I had this tunnel vision, right? Like, we have to get to safety. We're going to die. I have to pull this truck over. So he's a big guy. He's a lot bigger than me. And I unbuckle my belt. I kind of push him out of the way. I reach over. I put my foot on the brake, grab the steering wheel, and I pull the car over to safety. Well, when we stop the car, my heart is just pounding out of my chest, right? I'm drenched with sweat. I really didn't have much empathy for him at this point because I didn't know what had happened, but that's not really what I was thinking about. I know that sounds terrible, but my mind wasn't there. I was just really thinking we were going to die. And then, after I don't know how long it seemed, maybe a minute or two, I become aware that my son in the back seat is kind of hysterical. He's crying. He didn't know what was happening, but he knew something bad was happening. But honestly, I didn't even hear him, right? So normally I'm a very tuned in mother, but I didn't even hear him screaming. Well, those sorts of things, right, are the things that people experience when they go into this state of physiological overwhelm that we call diffuse physiological arousal. Heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up, we can't think clearly, we don't have problem solving skills, we can't take in what other people are saying. In fact, we just can't hear, just like I didn't hear my son. So it's very much like that. And so when we're not in physiological calm, what that means is we're really not very good right now to have a conflict discussion with our partner. So what needs to happen is that people take a break, okay? And now, for the person that wants to talk about this, if you say, all right, I'm out of here, I got to take a break, it can feel very abandoning. So couples really need to talk about this and say, look, I get too escalated and too overwhelmed when our fights start. I need to calm down. You need to calm down. And, we can then come back after 20 or 30 minutes to have a good conflict discussion. So that's about the amount of time that it takes, because all of these stress hormones and everything that are coursing through our body don't really have enzymes to kind of take them away, right? They just have to course through our blood and get out, and that takes about 20 minutes or so for them to process through. So in that time, what do people do? I mean, what constitutes a good break? Well, what you don't want to do is to continue to stay in your head and think about what was so upsetting. That keeps you all revved up. And so what you can do is to do things that are calming or soothing, right? So things like making sure that you're oxygenating your body and taking in, deep breaths and doing that over and over. For some people, it might be listening to music. I know what works for me is I have this silly game on my phone where I have to unscramble letters. And why I think that that works so well for me is because I'm getting off of the emotional side of my brain and now tuning into the side that I have to use logic, right? So I'm shutting down all that emotion and I'm focusing on unscrambling letters. And then my body naturally just starts to come down and calm down. And then I'm no longer, I'm no longer escalated like that. So, how do you know when you're approaching that point? I mean, I don't think we necessarily have to wait till we're in full blown crisis mode before we take a break. Sometimes, if you're just aware that your heart rate is escalating, then you can take a break. So, if your heart rate is going over 100 beats per minute, chances are you're heading into that realm of physiological overwhelm, or what we call DPA, diffuse physiological arousal. Now, I wear a Fitbit, and so I can tell you what my heart rate is at a given moment. Right now I'm at 83 beats per minute, which probably isn't all that good considering I'm sitting down. But anyway, so if it's going over 100 beats per minute, you want to do something that will calm you down and bring it back down to your normal, right? So I'd want to bring mine back down to the mid 80s probably if I was going over 100. And so when that happens, then I'm able then to think and problem solve and engage in a good conversation. And it's a good idea for your partner to do that as well, to use these self-soothing techniques. So Gottman found in his research that people can really only have good conflict discussions when they approach it from a place of physiological calm. So what that means is that break taking is really the answer if you're a Stonewaller. And Stonewallers, they know who they are, right? They know when they need to get away, when they feel like they're being chased by an angry bear. So if that's you, in a moment of calm, I would talk to your partner about that. And I would say, hey, you know what? When we get into it, I get really escalated. And I want you to know that I'm not abandoning you, but I really do just need a break. So when that happens, I'm going to give you the timeout signal. And what that means is I'm going to go calm down, and I'll come back in about 20 or 30 minutes and check in and see how things, if we can talk about things again. And that would be considered taking a good break.